the media just got right in on it, and are you content to go with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance as your quarterback room next year? And, Shanahan and Lynch said absolutely. There's two guys there that they can win with in their mind. That's Shanahan said we have two starters there we can win with, that they're content with Purdy and Lance as a combination. They're likely to bring in a third quarterback, it sounds like, but if you're hoping for Aaron Rodgers, it doesn't sound like that's the direction they're going to go. Now, Shanahan did indicate that he thought it was a 6-month recovery for Purdy, and that Purdy would likely, have 3 months and then start throwing. And then 3 months later, he thinks he's going to be back to the old Brock Purdy. So it sounds like Purdy is likely going to miss the start of OTAs, but would be there for training camp. And this is all pending a safe and timely recovery from whatever surgery he has. Now, Dan Patrick had a doctor on today, and that doctor said that it sounded like it needed a Tommy John elbow reconstruction. This is why you can't. This is why you should never do what never have doctors on to speculate. Because, is the guy a doctor? Yeah. But does he know Brock Purdy? No. Has he looked at Brock Purdy's elbow? No. He's just some guy with a degree who's calling in on the Dan Patrick Show. So take it for what it's worth. People ran with that, like Brock Purdy's done for all of next year, and the doctor on Dan Patrick's show knows, and he's not Brock Purdy's doctor. So we just need to. I know people don't like to be patient, but you're going to have to be patient on this one. We're going to have to be patient to figure out exactly the extent of the injury, what process he goes through, what surgery, if there is a surgery, he undergoes. And I'm sure we're going to find out more details about that in the weeks ahead. But Shanahan seemed to be adamant that Purdy would be back in 6 months. So at least from their public stance, that's their public stance. Trey Lance is supposed to be back ready and to hit the field in 3 or 4 weeks. So they've got two quarterbacks, and it sounds like they're content to go forward and just let those guys compete. And then, Grant asked if would Brock be the starter going into camp? Shanahan didn't want to touch that at all. He's like, I haven't begun to even think about that. I mean, he just put that one away and was like, no, I'm not answering that question. But he did say Lance will be able to go by OTAs, and it sounds like Purdy would be able to go by training camp. Now, they said they're currently working on coaching hires. Anthony Lynn, Bobby Slowick have both asked for the ability to interview elsewhere. And obviously, as you all know, D'Amico jumped to the Houston Texans, and there's some talk that he may want to take some of the defensive staff with him. Chris Kocurek is maybe on the top of that list. So we will see. And as far as a replacement for D'Amico, no names were thrown out. It sounds like they're going to look internally. They're going to look externally, but it sounds like that's number one on their plate right now. As far as definitive answers, will Jimmy Garoppolo be back? The answer was no. He didn't hedge. He didn't hem. He didn't go, well, there could be. No. Jimmy Garoppolo is gone. So, if he had said, Jimmy's out of here, Jimmy's gone, Jimmy's never going to wear a Niner uniform again. I mean, he could have said it any way he wanted to say it, but he basically was real clear. Jimmy is not coming back. As far as, are they in favor of bringing in a third quarterback, bringing back that third quarterback rule that the NFL had initially and then went away from it? Lynch and Shanahan both said that they are for that. And that just states that if your first two quarterbacks get hurt, you can go to a third quarterback so you don't have the situation that the Niners had. And I think just for TV purposes, when the NFL looks at the TV ratings at the beginning of that game, how many people were engaged, and then looked at the TV ratings as that game went on, I think it's going to paint a very clear picture that it's really in their best economic interest to bring back that third quarterback rule, which just states if the first two guys can't play, you got a third guy there. So I think that's probably coming back. As far as they were asked, what is the profile of the next quarterback that you're going to bring in to it sounds like they're going to bring in a veteran quarterback, and I'll go through some of the names out here. And I've got a name that I think you guys are going to not know, but I think it makes a lot of sense for the 49ers. And if I had to predict, it would be the guy that I would predict they will go get. I'll give you that in a little bit. But Shanahan was asked about the profile, and he just said, the best one available that fits our culture, fits our personality, and fits our cap. So those are three different things. But that's interesting. And then, Lynch, as far as they were asked about Tom Brady and his retirement, and Lynch just said, hey, respect, nothing but respect and appreciation for Tom Brady. We'll talk more about that in a bit as well. John Lynch said that he will indeed stay on as the general manager in 2023, saying, I'm committed. I really like John's comments as well about the Philly game. He says it wasn't in the cards. I think that's probably the best. It's not just diplomatic. I think it's also accurate. It just wasn't in the cards to beat Philadelphia. And then John went and said something that I also echoed in my post game right after the game, which is I would welcome a Niners, a 2023 49er team, 2022, 2023, this year's Niner team playing this year's Eagle team with a healthy Brock Purdy. I say bring that on. So, and obviously we're never getting that. We're never going to get that because Purdy's hurt. The teams will never be the same. We're never going to find out the answer to that. But I really believe the 49ers would have fared very well if Brock Purdy had been healthy. And it's clear from that quote from Lynch that he feels the same way. Shanahan revealed that today they're doing a lot of their player exit interviews today. D'Amico Ryans, of course, as you all know, has left for Houston. As far as will he take San Francisco assistants with him to Houston, Shanahan said, I'll have to talk to D'Amico about that, and it will involve the families and like where people want to be, where people want to live. So it sounds like they may have to have like a little head coach negotiation between Shanahan and D'Amico for some of the top assistants. Shanahan said he'd like to keep the current defensive staff and scheme. So when you're talking about replacements, I don't think they want to change up the scheme. I think they like their scheme. They like their defensive staff. They'd like to have somebody who can step into their defensive staff and make it all work. Now, is that Vic Fangio? I don't know. There's a couple other guys that have been listed as candidates as well. I don't know which of them would be a change in philosophy and which of them would be taking on the 49er philosophy. And some of it is up to the coach himself and how flexible do they want to be with what their their initial plan is. Some coaches are like, hey man, I'm a 3-4 coach and I'm not going anywhere else. I'm coaching 3-4. Well, the Niners are a 4-3 defense right now. So it's a 4-3 with a wide 9 look with Kosaric running the defensive line. Do they go with somebody who wants to give them more of the same? It sounds like they don't want to tear it down, change the entire scheme, and have to change out a bunch of players along the way. They want to keep their scheme, keep their staff, and add a new coordinator. So they were asked if they take player opinions into their coaching hires or factor them into their coaching hires. They said yes. As far as I thought it was really interesting. They talked about Emmanuel Mosley. He said he's rehabbing his knee. He's a free agent. They indicated they want him back. Thought that was kind of interesting. Shanahan, I thought, had the most interesting line of the whole thing to me. Now, everybody's got something different. I would love to know from you what interests you. But he says this year's team he said that he felt like this year's team had the best chance. He was talking about the Niners' ability and chances to win the Super Bowl. He said this year it felt the best. He says our players were focused every single day. They won 12 in a row. But I think it has a lot to do also with his confidence individually in Purdy. But obviously I'm just reading that into his quote. He didn't actually say that. He said that he felt the best, though, about this year's team winning the Super Bowl. And I did too. And largely because Brock Purdy was processing what he was seeing at the line of scrimmage really, really well. And then, Shanahan brought up the stat that teams went 0-16 after playing the Niners this year. And it's something that he's really proud of, the fact that teams got up for the Niners, but the next week they paid a price for how physical the 49ers were. And lastly, they said they expected Trent Williams to return. They had no official news on that, but they did expect Trent to return. And maybe that's a little bit of wishful thinking or hopeful thinking on their part. The other interesting thing is they were asked a couple times about quarterback injuries, once at the end by Cole from Yahoo and once earlier by Grant. And they were asking, once Lynch was asked about, hey, you got 4 quarterbacks that got hurt, is there any common denominator to the Niners and their quarterback durability issues? And Lynch said it was just a coincidence. Shanahan said that quarterbacks got hurt in all different ways and that there's no real common denominator there. So they both kind of crapped all over that theory. They went on to say that they thought the key to the salary cap was indeed having 2 quarterbacks on rookie deals. They admitted that to Tim Kawakami's question. Another indication that it doesn't sound like Aaron Rodgers is in the cards. John Lynch made it perfectly clear that Kyle's involved in player personnel decisions and that they always, John does the deep dive. Kyle gets away with his family. He says that we'll come up with a very good plan. And let's be honest, guys, they have come up with a very good plan every year. And then Lynch finished up by thanking the fans and how loud they were and pleading with them to please hang in there. He said they'll figure out an extension on Brandon Ayuk. He seemed to be more confident that they would come to an agreement with Nick Bosa on an extension. And then oddly, no questions about Javon Kinlaw, who got really thoroughly embarrassed in that Philly game. But a lot of people, or I should say a lot of people, Dave Lombardi asked about Drake Jackson. And Shanahan, I thought, showed his cards here, saying that he thought Drake showed a lot this year, but that he lost some power as the season progressed, and suggested that Drake needs to be diligent this offseason in getting his body stronger. So those are my takeaways.